Last Friday, I was fortunate enough to get invited onto what I would consider to be the best classic podcast there is, Countdown to Classic. If you want to go and have a listen to the full episode, I'll put a link in the description below. But the host Josh had myself, Geordie, Double Zug and Templar on there to talk about all things raid related, but in typical podcast fashion, obviously we went on some tangents. And some of those tangents actually led to some real good talking points, and there's one that I want to cover in particular today. I spoke about in a video recently whether it would be a good thing or a bad thing for Blizzard to actually actively try and balance classes. Back in Wrath of the Lich King, where they made changes to Feral Druids, they made changes to Ret Paladins by adding glyphs that just changed them enough to make them competitive. Going forward into Cataclysm, where we got absolutely none of that. Well, in Mr. Pandaria, even if we was just to use the first beta raid test weekend as an example, we've already seen what classes are absolutely pumping and which ones are going to be destined to have a little sit on the bench. Please don't take that literally. Of course, you can get through the raid on absolutely any class and spec, but it is kind of clear already which classes are going to be struggling more than others. So having Blizzard make some sensible adjustments to these, in my opinion, would only be a good thing for the game. When we was talking about this topic on the podcast, concerns were raised around PvP balance, which absolutely should be a concern. So any changes Blizzard were to make to try and bring classes more in line would absolutely have to have zero effect on PvP. Now, the good thing about when it comes to PvP is the addition of PvP power means in almost all circumstances you wouldn't want to not use PvP gear, because the amount of damage or heal in PvP power gives you is going to far outweigh any small benefits from PvE gear. So that got me thinking, what could Blizzard do which isn't too difficult, doesn't require mass amounts of effort, and could be tuned almost on a week-by-week basis to be able to get things right? And in my opinion, there is an obvious answer. Tier 14 set bonuses. The Tier 14 set bonuses are flat out boring for pretty much every single spec, and that shouldn't come as any surprise because in every new expansion, the opening tier set bonuses are normally pretty bland in comparison to the final tier set bonuses. Now, you're probably wondering why this is important, and it's pretty important purely because all of the classes are balanced on a 5.4.8 state. That means these classes were balanced around the items, the trinkets, the set bonuses, the boss encounters, absolutely everything in Siege of Orgrimmar. There would have been no consideration for any of the previous content whatsoever. Who cares what a class can do in Mogasham Vaults when that's old content and the current content is Siege of Orgrimmar? This even meant that Masteries was nerfed or Masteries was changed. For example, Windwalker is one that I've spoke about many times, where because they couldn't balance it properly with Rune of Re-Origination, which comes from Throne of Thunder, they just flat out changed the Mastery, which was terrible. The Mastery for Windwalkers is terrible, and it's exactly why it got changed again and eventually rested where it is now in retail. Before we get into any more of this, be sure to check the link in the description and the pinned comment to Rested XP. If you haven't got a Rested XP guide ready for Mr. Pandaria, make sure you pick one up. It is an affiliate link, so any guides bought go towards supporting the channel, but alongside getting the guide itself, which you already know is the fastest way to level, you're going to be able to make use of it in the pre-patch on your monk. You're also going to get a quest stacking guide ahead of launch, so you know which quests are the best ones to stack up. And then you'll also get sort of a handing guide, which will guide you around to get the most optimal handing route done as well. And you even get a level 90 reputation guide that will guide you around all your dailies. Again, any guide you buy go towards supporting the channel, so thanks in advance for that. And what do I think Blizzard should do? Well, the Classic team have just spent over the last year playing around with items, tier set bonuses, balancing classes around new runes, and yeah, I'm talking about Season of Discovery. So the ability to do any of this is definitely in their wheelhouse, and I think the tier 14 set bonuses are the perfect place to start. So if we was to firstly just look at an Elemental Shaman as an example, the 2-set Elemental set gives you 5% extra damage with Lightning Bolt, whereas your 4-set gives your Rolling Thunder ability to grant 2 Lightning Shield charges each time it triggers rather than 1. Now, most of these sets, when we look through them, one of the main abilities just has a flat damage increase. So the 2-set for Feral DPS, for example, is just Mangle, Cat and Shred, gets 5% additional damage. We can kind of ignore the 4-set bonuses on all of these sets for now. If we looked at a Shadow Priest, it increases the critical strike chance of your Shadow Word Pain by 10%. Windwalker just gets a reduction of Fist of Fury cooldown by 5 seconds. Balanced Druid just has their Starfall damage dealt increased by 20%. So all of these 2-set bonuses could easily be changed to help balance the classes. This means it's going to have no effect in PvP because no one's still going to want to use PvE gear in PvP because of all of the PvP power they're going to lose. Most of the sets are one of your primary abilities that you use in your main rotation, and the vast majority of them are already just damage. The Shadow Priest is a bit of an exception there where it's critical strike chance, which to be fair, should have been damage anyway. I don't know why it's crit. So looking at a different one being Retribution Paladin, where it increases the damage done by your Templar's Verdict ability by 15%. If we was to say Ret Paladin was struggling a little bit on single target, but not on AoE, because that would be my opinion on Ret Paladin. Their AoE is absolutely fine, and this set bonus only affects single target because it's Templar's Verdict, which is your single target spender. They could just up this by another 10%, give Templar's Verdict an additional 25% damage. They could go to Feral DPS and up the Shred and Mangle damage up to 10% instead of 5%. They could go to the Shadow Priest 2 set and leave the critical strike chance by 10%, leave that in, but also add 10% extra damage to Shadow Word Pain as well. By just playing around with a few of the set bonuses, it's an easy, safe way to be able to tune the classes to only affect PvE. Now, on the basis we've seen these Celestial dungeons, which we don't know 100% what they're going to be yet or what they're going to reward, most people are assuming that it's going to be the Raid Finder gear that you're going to be able to get, the same way you can from the Twilight dungeons in Cataclysm, which actually means if that's the case, then getting tier set bonuses should be incredibly easy, because you're probably going to be able to just grind out your set bonuses in Celestial dungeons anyway. So these benefits to the classes that are going to give you extra damage or bring better balance is not going to be something that's going to be difficult to get. Again, that is assuming that you can get your set bonuses from the Celestial dungeons, which, come on, that's going to be what they do. This also means they're not playing around with spell coefficients, so it's not going to have any knock-on effect, and it doesn't need to be limited to DPS. When we look at the healers, we already know Resto Shaman and Disc Priest are two in particular that are going to be absolutely stacked. So if we was to look at one of the weaker healers, like a Holy Paladin for example, their 2 set reduces the mana cost of Holy Radiance by 10%. Why not chuck in an extra 10% healing on Holy Radiance as well? Or on Mistweaver, where it reduces the mana cost of your Surging Mist spell by 10%, also reduce melee ability mana cost by 10% as well. So that'd mean things like Jab and Rushing Jade Wind would cost less so you can fist weave more. Ultimately, just a more fun experience. There's tons of things they can do that will help balance the classes in the first phase, yet it still would have very little knock-on effect in Throne of Thunder, because when we get to Throne of Thunder, the eye level increase is so high that you're going to want to be swapping out those bonuses irrespective of what they give because of the massive inflation in item level. And you're now going to get powerful set bonuses anyway, because the good set bonuses started with Throne of Thunder. And what you got to remember is it's around Throne of Thunder that most of the classes are balanced. Yes, I said Siege of Orgrimmar, but the vast majority of the class changes came in 5.4, where they was balancing all the classes around the best gear that they've got from Throne of Thunder. So at this point, we kind of catch up with the class balancing. It's only the first phase where the class balancing is going to be completely off. So I won't drag this out any longer than I need to. This is just my opinion and my thoughts on how they could actually bring balance to the classes in the first phase to make the first phase an absolute banger, because as we get to Throne of Thunder, most of it's going to be irrelevant anyway, and you're going to start changing that gear out. And if for some reason anything slips through the cracks and some of these set bonuses remain really strong, they can give it the tier 12 Elemental Shaman treatment. And if you don't know what I mean by that, they can just revert them back to their original state, because this is exactly what they done in Firelands for Elemental Shaman, where they gave us the original tier 12 LE Shaman set bonus. As soon as Dragon Soul launched, bang, it was reverted back to its nerfed state. So they could do exactly the same here. Have all of the set bonuses buffed for the classes that are struggling, and then as soon as we go into Throne of Thunder, revert them straight away. That also won't then have any issues in Throne of Thunder progress, potentially making it easier than it should be. But let me know your thoughts in the comments as to how Blizzard could balance the classes to make Mr. Pandaria an even more fun experience than it's going to be. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Consider hitting the join button to become a member to show that extra bit of support, and I'll see you on the next one.